Hello, hello, hello there. I am Marcelin Bailey of ML Bailey Consultants, and you are inside of ML Bailey Consultants Live. This evening, I just want to encourage you all today and want to share a quote that I learned from my grandmother. And I believe it's a quote that's filled with hope and a reminder that whatever situation you're in today, it is not going to last. My grandmother lived to be 102 years old, and she died in 2008. In 2008, it was not as common for people to live past 100. Well, now we have people who live into their 120s now. So it's become more common. But back in 2008, it wasn't as common. But my grandmother taught me a lot of things. She had a lot of wisdom uh, inside of her, and she shared it with me. When we were growing up, she lived with our family, and she kept my brother and I when my parents were at work. But my grandmother worked also. She was a domestic. She was one of the women that you read about in the book The Help by Catherine Socket. Well, my grandmother talked a lot about what it was like to work for the people she worked for. I mean, she was on her feet all day. She had a lot to do and she had to meet their demands, right? She also had to deal with the homeowner as well as their children. And for a domestic worker, she also knew that she had to stay in her place. She grew up poor. I mean, yeah, she grew up poor. She was the daughter, one of three daughters of a sharecropper and his wife. And I actually met my great grandmother. So my grandmother knew what it was like to struggle. She knew what it was like to work hard because her own father died when she was young. So it was important for her to go to work when she got old enough to do so. She went as far as the third grade, she told me, and she said that, and I knew that she learned to read, write, add, subtract, but she could not continue her education. That was not possible for her. It certainly wasn't possible for her in the South where she was from. But my grandmother had this way of looking at life. And I know that life wasn't hard for her. It was very hard for her. As a matter of fact, it was very tough. And I often think about that when our cable goes out and I get frustrated about that, or when there's a storm and the lights go off temporarily. And I think about how she grew up without electricity. They had to use lanterns. And then when she got older, I remember how she talked about how difficult it was. It was nothing for my grandmother to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch a bus at 5 so that she can be at the home she was working at by 7. And think about doing that in the wintertime in Ohio, which is where I grew up. So she didn't have a very easy life. But the one thing my grandmother had was wisdom. And that wisdom is something that she shared with me. And one of the sayings that I thought and I hold on to is a saying that she shared with me. And that saying is, there isn't an ill wind that doesn't change. She also would say, time brings about a change. I think in all of my grandmother's 102 years, she learned that life is and is a period of seasons, and that in our lifetime, we will have seasons of joy. We will also have seasons of sorrow. We will have seasons of plenty, and we'll also have seasons of loss. She understood that and she lived through it. And I believe that the way she lived through it was because she always had hope. And that's something that I guess I want to share with you today, that regardless of what you're going through today, regardless of what it looks like today, regardless of what it feels like today, as long as you're standing, as long as you're breathing, there is hope. And that's not coming from me, but it's coming from a little old lady who had a lot of miles on her feet, who shared that with me. My grandma always said, as long as I'm standing, as long as I'm breathing, there is hope, because there isn't an ill wind that doesn't change, and time does bring about a change. So I leave you with hope today. I leave you with peace today. I wish you well. And as always, take good care.